Hey guys, welcome back to another live stream. I'm Geoff from Lost Decade Games, and just announced a Wizard's Lizard 2, which is a follow-up to a Wizard's Lizard, our game on Steam currently. So today we're going to be working on a Wizard's Lizard 2, which we're using Unity for. If you've been following these game dev live streams, you've probably seen some of the various things we've been working on, but now we're kind of going to be more focused on a Wizard's Lizard 2 development. So if you're interested in following our mailing list, you can sign up at www.wizardslizard.com/2. It's also in the logo in the one side or another. I don't remember. Anyways, thanks for joining. Or if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching as well. And I think today I'm going to get started on developing a simple dialogue system for the game. It is sort of an action RPG in the same vein as the Wizard's Lizard 1, and so one of the things we use to communicate with the player is dialogue boxes. You know, when you inspect something or you talk to an NPC or NPCs talk to you or whatever. So we're going to develop something really simple that will fit that bill. A couple new things that we haven't seen on the stream before is we have some new Raga frames that Matt's been working on. They're still a work in progress though, and as you can see, the animations aren't completely worked out, but they are, getting there as we kind of continue to iterate on that. Another thing is that we do want to dive into the lizard more in a Wizard's Lizard 2. So one of our big focuses is making sure that we, dig a little deeper with Raga and his characteristics and what makes him a lizard and why that's important to the game. One of the things we've done is we've changed the default interaction from just a simple interaction to this tongue mechanic that I've been working on. And the way the tongue works is that you can kind of lick various objects in the game. And in the case of an NPC, it's going to trigger the dialogue or whatever. So you can walk up to people and lick them, and then that's how you'll interact with them. And that will also potentially be used in a lot of other ways in the game as well. Interacting with switches or things like that. So you can see right now, basically all we have so far is that when you interact with something, it just prints out its dialogue to the console window here. So it says, Raga, I am your wizard. Just some default text there. But anyways, we actually want to display it on the screen because that would be a lot cooler and a lot more useful. So let's check in with chat real quick, and then we will get started. Alrighty. So the first thing we're going to want to do is probably just lay down our UI elements that are going to make up the dialogue. And so I think what we're going to start with, we already have this level UI canvas, and this is where our player statistics are and some other kind of UI stuff. That's all actually controlled from inside this level controller script. We have a reference to level UI, and so when a level loads, it'll show the level name and things like that. It can update the player stats, health and mana as the game progresses. And then there's a black overlay right now that's used to kind of fade in, fade out the screen. So the first thing we're going to need is probably a UI text element, and this guy is just going to live, right in here. And let's see, we'll have it left aligned for now, top aligned, can wrap, and vertical, say truncate for now. And the color of the text, let's make it white, maybe. And go into our DB16 palette, use this white for the text. And we'll keep it about the same size for now, I guess. I can also just put it down there for now. Maybe more like here. and then we'll call this something else. We'll call it hello dialog. And then the way we interact with this guy, let's just close all these files, is there is a level UI component which manages all that stuff. And so it's got different links for these things. So we'll say game object, dialog. In this case, we really just kind of want the text of the dialog. No, not necessarily. We probably want all of it, so we'll just grab reference to that. And we'll go back in here, and now in the level UI, we have a dialog reference there. We're going to drag and drop that. I've also discovered, like, you can get components from children and stuff like that. I'm starting to use that a little bit more than like dragging and dropping things as references, but I don't really know yet what my preferred method is for kind of cross-referencing objects and components. And I'll say this is some dialog text. The other thing we're going to want actually is probably an avatar, like a sprite avatar, to show along with the text, but we will do that in a second step. So the other thing we're going to do is create basically an entry point. So we have a bunch of these like show overlay, hide overlay, show level name, fade out level name, etc., etc. We're going to add another, I guess this will be a public method. We'll call it show dialog, and then we'll say string text message. And then later on to do add parameter for avatar sprite or whatever. And what we want to do is we want to set the text and show the dialog. And obviously we want some kind of fading effects and stuff like that. But first we'll just kind of get it working at all. Let's see, and so we're going to do the same thing here where we say dialog.setActive false, so by default it won't be there. And then we're going to, in here, say dialog.setActive is true. And we also need to update the text, so we'll get a reference to that, so that'll be dialog.getComponent text, and we'll say text.text is equal to message, and that should be enough to just make it work. So first thing we'll do, just to make sure it's working at all, is we'll go into the I think this file is still called tilemap test. I need to rename this at some point. Anyways, at some point in here we call show level name. So let's just add a level UI dot show dialog, and then we'll say this is a test message 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that should come up at the same time as the level name is coming up. So let's just give it a try and see what it looks like. Okay, so it's there, which is good. Let's see, horizontal overflow wrap. It didn't really look like it was wrapping. Unless it wrapped, there wasn't enough space. We'll probably have to increase the size of this thing. So, wow, that is that's not what I wanted. Is there an easy way to make this thing bigger? I guess I can just do that. 600, 100, 80, so 400. Okay, that might be good enough. Let's just make sure it's not getting truncated. Test message 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. What if we made it really long? Just copy that. Paste a bunch in there just to kind of see how it works. Great. That's good enough for now. And I think we could probably put a background color on here if we wanted to as well. We'll do that in a minute, maybe. Really, the complicated part about this whole thing is, now that we have these two pieces, the first piece is that in the game logic, there are things that happen that cause us to say we want to show a dialogue on the screen. And right now, those are being output to the debug console. And then on the other hand, we have this UI element that we have a wrapper function essentially where we can say show some text in this box. And so now we need to link those two together. This is kind of an interesting choice because there's a couple ways you could do it. One is you could, for every object that spawned, you could have a listener, an event listener that says, are you a what I call a speaker, and a speaker is something that can emit dialogue. And so, for example, the speaker has this script where right now on interaction they just debug log. And so here's where what we really want is tap into the level UI dot show dialog method. So that's what we're gonna figure out. Let's check with chat. Yeah, that's definitely a good point, Salon Moose. Those messages aren't always going to be hard-coded. In AWL 1, we essentially had a JSON file that contained all of the strings in the game. And then so what it would look like is something more like, level UI dot show dialog, and I pass in some kind of a key like dialog wizard 1 or something, and then that would be a key, to a database or essentially to a lookup table that contained the text, and then those JSON files can get swapped out for different languages or whatever. And so yeah, that is definitely something that we'll be building more towards once this feature is a little more complete. Anyways, so let's get into that. The other way to do it is by using send message or by object references directly. I think that the way that I'm going to do this, I might try using send message. And so send message is a Unity method of game objects where you can send messages to game objects, and then any script on that game object can intercept that message and then do something with it. The other way to do it, I'm trying to think of the most performant way to do it, because I don't want to have to inspect every game object on spawn in order to hook an event that says, hey, are you a kind of a speaking entity, and when you speak, I want to show what you're speaking to the player. So it's probably better if the speaker itself kind of sends a message either up through the hierarchy or just kind of from the top down. I think the dead simple way to do it would be just to say, game object dot find certain game object. So maybe we'll do that first just to get it working, and then we'll refine it as time goes on. So we're gonna get rid of this testing message real quick, and then just to see if this is gonna work the way I think it is, what we can say is game object. This would be, we'll call it level UI. Well, say object for now because that's going to be a component. Is equal to game object dot find, and this is called level UI. And then we want the level UI component, so we'll call that level UI. I guess what I could do is just do game object dot find level UI, and then get component level UI. And then I won't even need to store that in a temporary variable, which is a little better. And then from here we can say level UI show dialog, and then we can say dialog, I guess, is the string value here. This will probably expand to an array or something, to do, well, handle more text states. For example, if the NPC had something to say differently based on certain conditions of the game, like have you completed this milestone, have you completed that milestone, are you on a certain step of a quest or something, or anything that would really change what they were going to say. So this really shouldn't be a just a string sitting on the NPC. It's going to be something a lot more contextual. But we like to build in small pieces and then iterate. So let's see if that's actually going to work. There's no errors, so that's good so far. So let's go up and trigger that. Yeah, there it goes. Raga, I'm your wizard. And so that works pretty well, at the basic level. Obviously a lot of cleanup to do. One thing is that it doesn't go away. And you can actually still move while the dialogue is up, which is, not the worst thing in the world. The quick and dirty way would be to set a timer. You could even do this on the level UI. We could use something like invoke to say hide dialogue, and then give it, 3 seconds, let's just say. Void hide dialogue, and then all we'll do is just say dialogue dot set active is false. And then we'll just go up here, we'll find a wizard, one of the many wizards. And after 3 seconds it should go away. And it does. And then if we were to go find another room, we probably want to reset that that invoke as well. So just say cancel invoke hide dialogue. So that's kind of like the most basic quick and dirty approach I can possibly think of, which usually is the way that I like to start working on stuff. And then from there you can kind of figure out, like, okay, this doesn't work that well in this scenario, or now it needs to have a few more features or whatever. So now if we trigger it multiple times, it should always be 3 seconds from the last time. And ideally we want that to be player controlled. They could either advance to the dialogue or they could just cancel it outright or whatever. So I always like to make notes in some of these things. So the dialogue stuff, the dialogue system should be more like a queue. And the game system can basically feed in a whole bunch of messages. So if there were like a couple pages of messages, there's a long speech or something, then basically the latter messages would be queued up, and then the player could go forward through those messages at their leisure. Check in with chat again, just to make sure I don't miss stuff. Yeah, so someone in chat is asking if the maps are going to be a lot bigger instead of having room transitions, or is this just to show how the game works? The plan right now is to have a little bit bigger maps, and so you can see currently that the maps are not like a room by room transition. They're kind of more connected to each other, and I like that for a number of reasons. One is that it's a little more interesting. And two, it kind of sidesteps some of the problems with the rooms having to shut down and recreate the room states every time you came and went into those rooms. And it caused problems for placement. Actually, Matt and I were kind of talking about this, how if you come into a room and there's like a spike trap right here in the doorway and it just nails you, it feels pretty cheap, and there's really nowhere you can go right away. The door closes behind you, and you can dodge sometimes to the left and the right, but that can get difficult. And so this kind of a map setup allows a little bit more, player agency, essentially, when it comes to moving through doorways and, addressing traps that may be close to the door and stuff like that. The other thing is it will probably try to have better heuristics around not putting, deadly things, this square right in the doorway. And the room populators for this game are going to be probably a little bit better than the first game, and so it shouldn't be as much of a problem. So hopefully that answers some questions. Still nursing this cough a little bit, so apologies for the throat clearing. So the next step is basically to make this one, we kind of want it to paginate, and then two, we want to clean up the look of it a little bit. And so I think first we'll just work on the queue system. And so actually this will probably be in here at the class level. Probably going to want just a private variable, and I like to use generic lists, so we could just make a we want a for now we can just use a list of strings, because eventually we want avatars on there, but for now I think actually you can create a list that has multiple data types. I don't remember. We'll call this dialog queue. Actually, I think that there is a C# queue element, if I remember correctly. Oh, there is. There's a generic queue class. Let's see if that wants to work. No? MSDN? All right. So it has NQ and DQ. The beginning of the queue adds an object at the end of the queue. So let's use that. I like built-in data types that do awesome stuff for us. So let's say queue of strings, call it dialog queue, and then we'll say it's a new queue. And we're already using, oh no, we're going to need the system.collections.generic directive. And then what we want to do here is, instead of just showing it right away, we'll probably take out this invoke thing for now, because that's kind of a hack anyway. We really don't want it to be a time-based thing. We really want it to be player controlled. So the player, basically has to press some button in order to advance the dialogue. So when we actually get a message in from show dialog, what we really want to do, we want to enqueue it. So enqueue message. And then we're going to want a private function, probably, called process dialog queue. And really all this is going to do is just check the queue. If there's anything in it, pop it off and show it. So what we're going to do is, I think that it's just DQ and it returns it. Okay, great. And then is there a count? Yes, there is. Okay. So we'll say if dialog queue.count is less than 1, don't do anything. Otherwise, we'll say string message is equal to dialog queue.dq, and then we can do this stuff. And then we'll want to call process dialog queue right here. Another thing we'll want to do is if we're currently showing a message, we don't want to do this either. If currently showing, then exit. So a lot of pieces have to be built up here as we go. Oh, might help if I use parentheses. No? To system collections generic queue. Interesting. Oh, right, because I need to, there we go. Good old C#. Alright, let's just make sure that still works the way we think it is. Okay, it's great. So now what we could do, well, first let's work on advancing the dialog. That's probably the next best thing. So we're going to want to use the gamepad API, or really not the gamepad API, but the input API. And so the way we do that right now is in player input. You can just say input.getButtonDown or whatever. And so we'll probably want to use the A button, which is fire 1 by default, as the dialog advancement. So we're going to need to put a function here, public void update, and then we can say if input, oops, that's not what I wanted. If input dot get button down fire 1, then we can say, actually we can say process dialog queue, and let's see, I guess what we can do here is we can say if dialog queue dot count is greater than 0, then do all this stuff. Otherwise, hide dialog. I don't know if we need that function for now. Let's just move that back in here. Just keep it simpler for the moment. So if we press fire, then we'll process the dialog queue. Trying to remember if the Unity API for gamepads, oops, Unity input get button down. Let's just look that up real quick. Okay. Will not return true unless the user is released. Okay. Yes, that's what we want. Okay. So the way the get button down works is that it doesn't return true over and over and over again. It will only return true once, and then the button has to be released and repressed before it will return true again, which is really what we want by default. So essentially what should happen now is when we talk to this guy, yep, so now the text won't go away right away, it'll just stay there forever, but if we hit the advancement button, it'll advance to the next one, or if there isn't any, it'll just go away. So the next thing we can do is we can change this to be more of an array of strings, and then we could say for each string message in dialog. What it works out with a regular array? Let's find out. So we're just going to call show dialog a whole bunch with the different messages, and then we'll go in here into our testing wizard. And now, so we'll change this, let's say 3. Nope, 30, that's way too many. 3. We'll say, hi, Raga. How are you? And then, I'm great. Thanks for asking. He's a very polite wizard, this guy. And let's see if it works. Wow. I'm great, thanks for asking. Okay, well, that's good. So, clearly not doing exactly what we wanted it to do. So now it's time to debug. I think the problem is that, yes, I think we need to do one more thing. Unity, let's look for active. No? Game object active. Active self. Let's see. Oh. Active self, I guess that's the name of the thing we're looking for. It's basically the active flag or not. So, what we want to do is say if dialog dot active self. If not, no, if it is active, yes, then return. That way we don't have those messages trample each other. We can just kind of move through them at our leisure as we read them. Shall I put a wizard in the first room? Hi, Raga. No, nothing. Damn it. So, more problems. So let's just see. Let's just debug .log all the messages coming into this little system. That way we can kind of see what might be happening. Okay, that's all good. So the messages are going into the queue. Oh, I got a cat on my lap. Hello, cat. Let's say hello. No, no. Hi, cat. Okay, down you go. Time for more programming. Let's check in with chat real quick. Answer any questions. Yeah, just iteration is really the key. I found Unity a lot easier to work with, having done some game dev in other instances, just because the concepts of entity and component systems and how game logic kind of generally works, you know, is not really specific to Unity. And so if you have like other game development experience, that translates really well, I found. Really the big thing with learning Unity is just figuring out all the stuff that it does, you know. It's kind of like, I want to do this certain thing, so I need to figure out how best to do that in Unity. Like, what's the kind of, you know, expected way to get that done? What tools does Unity give you in order to accomplish something like that? Okay, I see what the problem is here. So, if we press down 1, yeah, so the problem is once it's up, we can't fast forward because it just early returns. So I guess what we'll do is, basically we'll just give ourselves a Boolean variable here called force and when we do it through input, we'll say it's true, and otherwise it's false. And then we'll say if not force and it's not active, then return. And that should theoretically work. Hi Raga, how are you? I'm great, thanks for asking. No more. Great. The next thing we need to do, oops, is it might be nice to stop the player's input while our dialog is up. So let's do that. This is an interesting scenario because there's a lot of these subsystems that kind of live on their own, but when they start working in tandem, things get complicated. However, we do have a reference to the player in, basically our level controller, and we have a reference to the level UI. And so what we can do is we can throw some events. Let's say when the queue of dialogues is complete, and then reinstate the player's movement. So I think what we'll do is we'll do it here. We can throw an event. So we'll create some events. I like events. It's very much like JavaScript for me, and so that kind of helps. So this is going to be public delegate void, and we'll call it level UI dialog show. Yeah, I think that's the way it works. And then public delegate void, call it level UI dialog hide. And those are basically the signatures of the functions that you need to use to handle those events. And then we'll create some public events. Public event. This is going to be a level UI dialog show, and we'll call it on dialog show. And we're also going to have another one called level UI dialog hide on dialog hide. And then in here we'll say if on dialog show is not null, then on dialog show. Oops. And here, if on dialog hide is not equal to null, on dialog hide. I probably complained about this before, but I really wish I didn't have to do that null check for those events. It'd be nice to just be able to call it. But, such is life. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is in tilemap test, we have a level UI thing, and so in here we're going to say level UI dot on dialog show plus equals, and we'll say on level UI dialog show, and then level UI dot on dialog hide on level dialog hide. There we go. And then this is kind of a messy file at this point, but it will get cleaned up more in the future, I promise. And we'll say on level UI dialog show, and then in here we're going to say disable player input, because we already have some helper functions to do that. Because during the fade in, fade out process, we also want the player's input to get disabled. And we'll say on dialog hide. We will then enable the player input. And then theoretically that should allow us to kind of pause. Well, we'll probably have to do that in a slightly different way because what we've done now is just really, well, one, it didn't work. Whoa! So let's see. On level UI dialog show. Showing dialog and then disable player input. Alright. Showing dialog. This is hi Raga, showing dialogue. How are you? I'm great, thanks for asking. But yeah, we can still move. So clearly that did not do what we wanted it to do. Oh, I know what it is. So the player input actually, when the tongue mechanic goes out and comes back, it disables the player's movement during that time too. Really what we want to do is actually pause the game. Actually, that's something I don't know how to do quite yet in Unity. Basically, I want to stop the game clock, but just for, you know, just for kind of like the game logic. So really what we want is to do pause the game. To do unpause the game. So I won't worry about that right now because I don't really have any clue how to go about that at the moment, but that's a good task for another time. Let's check in with chat. Someone's asking about, Word is asking about, what went to deciding putting dialogue overlay and not over the characters talking. I don't think that's completely decided quite yet. That is something that we could change. You know, it'd be pretty easy at the UI layer to instead have those dialogues pop up over the characters kind of in the game world. So we could do it that way as well. I don't know. I kind of default just to kind of doing the overlay first, just to kind of get it working because it's a little bit easier. You don't have to worry about the relative positioning and stuff like that with kind of the speech bubble. But yeah, it's a really interesting choice to make as well. I guess the point is that it's not really set in stone at this point, and right now I'm just kind of prototyping out how it's all hooked up in the first place. Yeah, C# is kind of similar to Java, as Salon Moose is saying. Yeah, exactly. So Salon Moose also says that you want to stop projectiles and stuff as well because you don't want to get hit while you're talking. That's a good point. So that's why I want to kind of pause the entire game. See what this list that we're looking at, programming. Oh, I see. Yeah, a bunch of good places to start making games. Some of those, you know, are quite involved. You know, like once you get past, you know, Tetris is actually pretty difficult as a first thing. 1942, interesting challenges there too. Scrolling maps, things like that, and then it kind of gets crazy. MMORPG, yeah. Good stuff. That's an interesting list. Thanks for that link. So anyways, we'll go back to our dialogue work. So we'll come back here and later we'll want to pause the game, but now let's spend a little time like prettying up the dialogue box just to see what we can do with it. Maybe adding a avatar, that would be kind of cool. So we have a kind of a visual of who's talking. I don't think we're going to do anything as crazy as like character portraits, but in Wizard Lizard 1 we just kind of showed the sprite, you know, the default camera-facing sprite of the entity which was talking. So this is probably going to get to be a bigger object. I think that, what is this thing? It is the overlay has a color. So it's an image. So what we'll probably want to do is probably want to create an empty game object that's actually going to be a parent of this guy. And then probably just call this dialog text. And then we'll call this dialog. And we're going to have to change some of our references here, but that's okay. And then we'll want this to be an image. And we'll make it, let's make it blue. Excuse me. It's kind of the Final Fantasy style, you know, white on blue. Is there an easy way? Oh, there is. Yay. Great. That's the tool I was looking for. I was going to say, is there an easy way for me to just drag this rectangle to the size I want it to be? And the answer is yes. Yes, there is. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Well, maybe. Maybe the image can actually be the root. Let's try that. So let's get rid of this guy. So we'll call this dialog. I think Unity also does some nice kind of 9-slice, you know, bordering we could use for this too. So that would be kind of cool. And then in level UI, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change this to be the dialog, not the dialog text, which will change just a couple things in here. When we're saying the component or the text, what we're going to want to do is say dialog get component in children here. That should theoretically work. Hopefully. We'll find out. No errors, which is good. It's not it's an object. So it's saying that there isn't a text component of the children, right? Yes. Get component in children. That's interesting. I was using that earlier and it was doing what I wanted it to do, but I'm probably just screwing up at the moment, which happens a lot. Let's see, so we'll say Unity get component in children. So the type. So dialog is already a game object, so that should work. I don't know why it's not. Well, we'll figure it out in a second. Here we go. This is great, having people Google stuff for me in the chat. That's very helpful. Oh, I guess that link didn't go where I wanted it to go. That was kind of weird. There we go. Interesting. Timescale. So what does this guy say? We don't want all updates to stop though. Huh. Oh, looks like the fix for that is to on GUI. It's interesting. I will have to look at that later and figure out what's going on there. That's it's interesting. Thanks for that link. Let's figure out why we can't get this text text object for this dialog. So we'll say text. No. Okay. That's not cool. I wonder if we can check that out. So it's a game object, which is correct. And it has a text component on a child, so you would think, oh wait. Maybe because it wasn't active to begin with? No. That is interesting. Oh, maybe, oh, I know what's going on. I think it has to be active before we try and get any children, because otherwise if it's not active it'll just return. Because get component in children only works on active objects, I think. Yeah, there it works. Hi Raga, how are you? Great. Awesome. That's a little cooler looking. Obviously it still needs a lot of work, but it's not a bad start. Obviously we want some graphics and stuff in there, so let's do just gonna move this text over here. And this is the interesting part where I'm not super comfortable with the Unity UI stuff, but essentially what I want is, I guess, an image. And I want that image to be, I guess you can use a sprite. Okay. So I can just set that to the sprite maybe? I don't know. Let's see. Let's just drag a sprite there first and see what that looks like. So we'll go into, let's see where we have that stuff. Images, sprites. Where's the wizard? There he is. So we can, oops. Let's go back here and then we'll put that guy right there. Whoa. Set native size. Interesting. Simple slice, tiled, filled. I haven't done a whole lot of stuff with these source images, so that's going to be an interesting thing to work with, because I think those images, they don't render exactly the same way as sprites. Oops. There's some bugs with some of the interaction, causes it to kind of freeze up because it never gets the reset event. I interacted with him twice, and so that's why he did the multiple things. But that's our rudimentary dialogue system, and it kind of works. The other thing we could do is on the speaker itself. You know, we could say could have public. Is it called a sprite? I think so. Public sprite. And we'll say avatar. It's called avatar. I think that's what it is. And then so if we go to characters, this guy, he's a speaker. That's his dialogue stuff, and then yeah, he has a sprite. So what we can do is we can go into our images again, and back to the wizard, and then we'll put his avatar as that, wizard 0. And then we want to change this thing to show a, so this will be a sprite avatar and a string message. And doing multiple things, like kind of, we probably want to have a class that encapsulates, or like a, what's called a tuple in other languages, I guess. I think you do tuples in C# as well. I'm not super experienced with how to define them right now, though, so I probably won't. For now, we're going to go the really quick and dirty way, which is going to be just a another queue. So we'll call it avatar queue. And this will be sprites. Still not the way they would do this. For production, probably. And then we'll just stop debug logging that, and we'll say dialog, or no, avatar queue. Oops. And queue, and then this is going to be the avatar. And then we'll say sprite avatar equals avatar queue dequeue. And then I think we'll want to say, what is this thing called? It's called an image. I think we're going to need the, oh, we already have the engine, Unity engine UI, so we should be good there. We don't need this debug anymore. What we do want, though, is we want to say, I think it's just going to be image, there's going to be dialog, get component in children, say image. And then maybe say image.sprite is equal to avatar. And then let's go in here and change this guy to none for now. Oh no, compiler errors. No overload takes one method, that's right. Because we've got to pass in avatar with a comma. And now it runs at least. That's a good start. And let's see. Whoa! That didn't work out exactly how I was expecting it to. Interesting. Let's take a look at that. Oh. Wait, this is extra. We don't need this thing. Oh, we do, yeah. Okay, I know what's happening. Because this thing has an image already, because it was the background color of blue. I see. I see. So that's actually not going to work exactly the way we wanted it to. Because, so it looks like find components in children actually returns components on the entity itself as well. I'm just checking out chat real quick. Word, thanks. Thanks for checking out the YouTube stream. Yeah, game development is a lot of fun. I used to be a web developer as well, and so I always wanted to make games, and it is a lot more fun. Yeah, the dialog system could be something that benefits from procedural generation as well. It just kind of depends. I think Dwarf Fortress is the kind of game where, you know, there's a lot of focus on the procedural elements, and you know, in a Wizard's Lizard and a Wizard's Lizard 2, procedural generation is going to be, you know, kind of a bedrock of the game's development too. But there's certain things that, you know, we're not really aiming for with this game, and one of those is probably, you know, not a whole lot of like procedurally generated quests and stuff like that. Maybe at least that's not kind of in the current vision for the game. Although I do like some light procedural generation with the text. One of the things that we did before was that the NPCs and then the bookshelves in the game, things you could interact with and read, they wouldn't, you know, they would have kind of randomized statements. So you could go to a bookshelf and it wouldn't always say the same stuff. Or you could talk to an NPC and they wouldn't always say the same thing. Not over and over again, but, you know, on different playthroughs. And yes, a struct would probably work well for that avatar thing. Structs are really just like kind of mini classes almost, without methods, just properties. But yeah, that would probably work better. My immediate need, though, is I need to differentiate between the image in the that's the dialog's background color and then the image that is the avatar. And so I think the best way to do that real quick would be to just change this to, call this avatar, and I guess we'll say image is equal to game object dot find, and then this will be like level UI. Obviously, we don't want to do this in production, but you know, level UI dialog avatar dot get component, and then we want the image. We would probably cache this and then use it more often. Let's see if that works a little better than our last foray into the avatar. There we go. Hey, look at that. And so now if we wanted to, you know, we could go in and modify this guy, and then we could change, you know, his avatar could be like just his head, or maybe we want him to be a piece of raw steak. That sounds like fun. I don't know why. There you go. Hi, Raga. I'm a piece of raw meat. How are you? I'm great. Thanks for asking. I think so. I also have this effects where I've been keeping some of my tweening functions. So the show level name, what do we use? Set text alpha. That's just text though. So this is going to be fade in canvas group. And so I have to remember how this works. So this had a canvas group. Right. Oh, it's a component. So I think we want to do the same thing here. We want to add a canvas group and see the overlay, interactable. Sure. Ignore parent groups. Sure, why not? That's fine. So instead of just setting it to be active and showing it, what we can do is we can say fade in canvas group. And it'll tween between 0 and 1. So we probably want to say set active is true, and then we can say effects, oops, dot fade in canvas group, fade in, and then it's going to be dialog, and 2 seconds and a callback. That's fine. We don't need that stuff right now. And here we would call that on the callback, the set active false, but fade out canvas group dialog, not the cube. Now it fades in. Except for, we only want to fade it in if it's not already active, I guess. So let's see. Dialog.active self. I would say bool dot is active equals dialog active self. And we can say if it wasn't active before we started, then fade it in. Otherwise, just do it. So it fades in, and then it just cycles through and it fades out. That is obviously way too long. So we'll probably say like 0.5f, 0.5f for now. Should probably look a lot better. Where did it? Oh no. It's in some kind of weird state. Oh, it's opacity 0. I think maybe what I want is to have a public static void, we'll call it set canvas group alpha. So game object, and float alpha. I think we already have a similar function called set text alpha. Yep. And really, all we're going to have to do here is a canvas group, and then group dot alpha is equal to alpha. Easy peasy, right? Maybe, hopefully. So then, if it wasn't active, oh, it never becomes unactive. Is kind of the root of the problem here. So really, what we want here is we want to pass in a callback, which is going to be dialog.setActive is false. That may actually just do what we want. Because once it's inactive, then it should fade it from 0 to 1. So I'm still kind of messed up there. But it's mostly working. This is something that I'll have to go back into at some point and really figure out a better flow for this stuff. This is just kind of trying to prototype the text dialogues to see where we might want to go. I do like the idea of doing the in-game speech bubbles. That's always kind of cool. One thing that Matt and I talk about from time to time is never taking the controls away from the player. as much as possible, and so that really kind of fits in with that philosophy really well. So that is kind of cool. The dialogues above the heads. I'll have to think about that. Check my chat again, see how people are doing. Tags. Tags, he says. Let's see. I see. But wouldn't tags theoretically have the same problem? I mean, like performance-wise. Like, is using a tag any better than doing something like this? You know, up in like start or awake, where we're just finding the game object. Because it looks like it would still iterate through the entire tree, right? Game object dot find game objects with tag. Unless, you know, maybe it is more performant. I don't know. Let's see if it says anything. It doesn't really say much. I also tend to think of, in this particular case, we're looking for like a very specific game object. It's not like there's going to be a lot of avatar images within that, you know, structure, that hierarchy. And so we really just want that very specific one. And so maybe find is the right thing to do there. I don't know. That's a good question. A lot of this stuff is kind of, you know, I don't usually love my first pass at stuff, but it kind of gets the ball rolling in terms of deciding where you want to go. You know, it's really easy to agonize and have decision paralysis about how you want to implement something, especially when there's a lot of different ways to go. But I find kind of just getting something done kind of gives you a jumping off point where then you can say, okay, this really isn't exactly what I want, like it's not going down the road that I like, and so we'll try something different or whatever. Hey Dan, thanks for stopping by. I have not tried the built-in camera yet. Excuse me. I've been meaning to. It's interesting. There's a whole list of stuff that people have recommended to me via the stream, and it's hard to get to everything. But it is something that I want to check out at some point. I haven't yet, just because the current camera I have kind of works, and so I haven't really had the catalyst to go searching for the replacement yet. But I do like that tip. Salon Moose actually showed me the curves in the Unity Animator, which I will first probably try to digest on my own and from his video, and then implement on the stream at some point as well. Salon Moose says he's been down the fine path and it's Derby Dragons. I believe that. I believe that. I feel like there's a lot of stuff like that in Unity. The lights for me are kind of a dragony cave of dragonness, where the more I learn about how the lights work and the performance related to the lights, also dragons, and how, you know, it's interesting working with kind of like a sprite. Well, I'm working with sprite tile, but when you have your entire world built out of like these little sprites, if you're not using the high quality lighting, you know, the most performance taxing lighting, it tends to look really bad. So lighting is definitely a dragon filled endeavor. Let's see. The other thing I kind of wanted to work on, and I might save that for next stream, but another thing that it doesn't appear to me that it's extremely obvious is doing kind of a tiled sprite. And so you can see that this tongue right here that I'm using, it kind of shoots out the tip of the tongue, and it looks like he's like, you know, spitting out a boomerang or something. But in reality, what I'd like is to have, a middle of the tongue kind of fill in those gaps. And I played with like using scale, but scale kind of really distorts the images in ways that isn't really easy to handle. And the other thing is, um, at extreme distances it gets even worse. And so I want to have like a, essentially a tiled sprite where maybe there's a piece of tongue that is, so long, and then every, so many pixels or whatever, so many Unity units, it repeats that same sprite. And I've Googled that a little bit, and the way that it seems to be generally handled is by creating child sprite renderers and positioning them, at the appropriate tile spots within an object. Maybe that's something I'll try to build over the course this week if I decide to, or maybe I'll save it for next week's stream. We'll see. Oh, the other thing about lighting that's also really crazy is that there's like dynamic lights, and then there's baked lights, and baked lights can only affect things that are static, but it's a really big performance increase and stuff like that. So a lot of interesting stuff there. Let's check in with chat one more time. Yeah, selecting stuff in Unity, that would be a great tutorial, because there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And one thing I'm particularly interested in is like finding my preferred way of linking things together. Because you can call get component, you can call get component in children, you can just have a private variable, or sorry, a public variable on a component that you drag in from the Unity editor. You can use find with tag. There's all kinds of ways to get references to stuff in Unity, so it's pretty interesting. I think that that's probably gonna wrap it up for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm gonna stick around for another 5 or so minutes just to answer any questions and talk to you guys about whatever. Let me know what you think. I tried to focus a little bit more on one task this time with the dialog boxes, and I think that we'll probably iterate on those in another show, perhaps. Although I'm probably gonna be bouncing around. I might build out the dialogue stuff and then bounce over to something else and then come back in a future episode and iterate on the dialogues again. We'll have to see how that works out. So if you guys have any questions, just put in chat, and I will try to let you know what I think about various things. Once again, this is development for a Wizard's Lizard 2, which is coming to Kickstarter this summer. So pretty soon. It is based, not completely based, but as a sequel to a Wizard's Lizard 1, which is our game on Steam right now. So if you like that game, hopefully you'll like a Wizard's Lizard 2. It's going to be a lot of the same stuff that was really good, and hopefully none of the terrible things. So really looking forward to that. I have a lot of great ideas. As I alluded to in the beginning of the show, one of the things that we're doing is really trying to focus on the lizardness of Raga. He is an interesting character, and the fact that he is a lizard, I think, should carry a lot of weight. Matt and I have kind of talked about this ad nauseum, but it should be really important. Oh, speaking of Matt. Line renderer with a sprite at the end. Let's see. Yeah, summer is almost here, or the beginning of summer, but the Kickstarter will be coming during summer. We will give you guys plenty of notice, though. Plenty. Line renderer takes an array of 2 or more points to be used to draw a straight line. So, oh, I see. So you can use a texture, though, that have width could be textured. Interesting. I will have to look at this too. Thank you very much, Salmon Moose. I appreciate all the tips. That helps a lot. So I really could just have a line renderer and then the sprite at the tip. I will have to check that out. The other method of the spriting sounds doable, but I don't love it. I feel like, I know Unity has kind of just started to really embrace the 2D stuff in the last, couple of versions or whatever. Well, starting with 4.3. But I feel like a tiled sprite is something that it should just do out of the box. You shouldn't really have to, create a game object that has all these sub objects with sprite renderers with the same sprite. That just seems unnecessary. So hopefully they'll be maybe the line renderer will do what I want. As long as the line renderer allows a texture, then it should be okay. One thing that I'm not clear about, the sprite renderers make a lot of sense to me, but the material stuff doesn't make quite as much sense to me yet. Like when you look at things like particles, actually Matt made this fire material. Oh, here it is. And, I'm not always, when you look at the texture, the actual image, it's like, this fiery ring, but when you apply it to a material in the game, it doesn't look exactly like that, And so the way that textures get rendered as materials, I'm not completely comfortable with yet. But it's interesting stuff. How much time have we invested into Unity-based AWL? That's a good question. I think that, probably a couple months, but some of that was just learning Unity in the first place, like experimenting with Unity. I spent, I kind of forgot when I started messing around with Unity, but I guess it was maybe March or April. Maybe March, February. I don't recall. I have a terrible sense of time. But yeah, probably like a couple months of just learning Unity and then a couple months of starting to prototype AWL too. And some of that time has also just been kind of working on the game design and figuring out which areas we want to push forward on, where we want to double down, which things were good about AWL1, which things were bad about AWL1. If you listen to the podcast, you probably get all kinds of those ups and downs anyway. So good stuff there. Hopefully, we'll be able to take all the good pieces and none of the bad pieces. I gotta write some of this stuff down though. I think that I had this document stream, some things that I wanted to work on. Pausing, unpausing. That's something I've been thinking about. I'm gonna copy this. Something I've been thinking about in general, because that's going to need to happen outside of the dialogues anyway. And also the line renderer. Line renderer for tone. So that'll be good. I will definitely try the line renderer first because that seems going to be probably a lot easier. And then I guess basically the way that it'll work is that, so I have this raga tongue, and I guess I could make a subchild 2D object current empty. Materials. I can apply multiple materials to it. Let's apply fire. I don't know what that's going to do. Where's raga anyway? Does the line renderer have to be paired with something else? takes an array of 2 or more points. Oh, I see. So the positions. I see. So actually what we could do, we don't even need a separate object. We could just put the line renderer on the tongue itself, and then let's see. So the first one would be, what is he? Whoa. Interesting. I think we really want this to be like 0, because everything else is like, or sorry, not 0, but -1. No, it's weird. I don't know why. But theoretically, I would just take this second element and then make this position be Raga's kind of central point, and then the first position would be the tip of the tongue, and that should work out pretty well. And then I'll have to figure out how the material works with that, so that'll be interesting too. Very cool stuff. Cool, I think that's all for me tonight. But thanks for coming, guys. Dan, Word, Salmon Moose, sorry, Salmon Moose. Why do I keep saying salon? It doesn't make any sense. Thanks, guys, for joining me. I appreciate the tips. Feel free to always take over the chat with things that can help me be better at Unity. I love it. And yeah, hopefully you guys are excited for AWL 2. And we'll keep showing you more progress every week, and you can keep joining us, and we'll export these videos to YouTube as well. So thanks for joining, and we will catch you next week. Ship it.